Jirai-kei starts in Shinjuku with a Toyoko kid, basically homeless youth. Often seen people coming to Japan and being like, wow, this is so much fun, like everyone's drinking and partying, and I feel like they just don't understand what is going on behind the scenes. Domestic violence, being like trapped with your family, and so a lot of people from the countryside move to Tokyo without really much of, I don't know, anything's better than where I'm from.
Hello, and thank you for tuning in. If you're enjoying the show, subscribing is the best way to support us. It helps us grow and bring you new stories from life in Japan. All right, let's jump in. Welcome to Unpacking Japan. I'm Toby, and today I have the pleasure of sitting here with Jessie. You go online by Yumechi. You create a lot of content on J-fashion, and you also are participating in oshikatsu.
Yes.
We have a lot of interesting topics to cover today: jirai-kei, ACDC RAG, and many more. And like with all our guests here, I'd like to start a little bit about the beginning with what brought you to Japan?
Okay, so I came to Japan to live about 6 years ago, but when I was 15 years old, I did a homestay in Nagano Prefecture. I stayed there for about a week, and I was in Tokyo for about 2 days. And I really enjoyed it, but I couldn't speak any Japanese at the time, so I wanted to practice and study more because I had such a good time. And Nagano was really pretty, and it was really fun. And so I decided to study properly and came back for a study abroad in 2017. And then went back to America after that, and then came back to Japan to live like I am now.
Where did the interest into coming for a homestay come from?
My parents actually brought it up. We had a sister city program at the where I used to live, my old hometown, and basically my parents thought it would be a really good opportunity for me because I was already kind of into anime and Japanese stuff already as a child. So they saw the advertisement at the library or something, and then got me involved in that.
Wow, that's kind of a very unique opportunity to kind of come for a homestay in high school, you mentioned, basically, right?
Yeah, pretty much.
But your interest in Japan goes from before that already.
First grade.
First grade?
Yeah, I got really into Pokemon.
Okay.
I didn't know it was Japanese at first, but then over time I started seeing more other kinds of anime and stuff. So I'm not really that unique on the whole anime to Japan pipeline.
At what point in time, though, did the J-fashion interest come up?
I think when I was in 5th grade, I was already reading some manga that was maybe Tokyo Mew Mew. It's a kind of shoujo, kind of really kawaii style. And I really liked the outfits that the characters were wearing. And I was also a child, so I was playing little dress-up games and stuff on the computer. And they had a tag was Lolita, and it was all Lolita fashion and stuff. So I got really into Lolita fashion. And then when I was in junior high school is when I got my first dress.
Ah. Was it a Lolita dress at the time?
Yeah, it was. It was from the brand Bodyline. I got it from the first time I went to Nagano, and my host sister bought it for me as a present.
Oh, that's so kind of them.
Yeah, it was really, really cute. It had squirrels on it.
So you went on a homestay trip for a week to Nagano after your parents kind of helped you organize this, and then you came back for a study abroad.
Yes.
How long was the study abroad for?
It was for about 1 year. Yeah, 2017 to 2018.
How was that experience like for you?
Oh, it was really cool. I worked at a sashimi restaurant, and I went to university and stuff is normal, but also working at the sashimi restaurant, I learned all the names of fish in Japanese. So that's a weird part of my lore.
Yeah, that is interesting. How was this just a normal, or was this kind of more like what we imagine as these high-end sushi restaurants that kind of have these?
A mix of both. I would say it had a tachinomi area and stuff, and we poured Japanese sake with the little square wooden box with the cup in it and stuff. And it did have the sashimi counter. You could sit at the counter, but it did have table seating as well. And we also had a lot of donburi and stuff like that. So it was really unique, I think.
At the time, what was your idea of living? Did you think about moving here already on a more permanent basis, or was it still kind of just like temporary, 1 year study abroad and then go home and do something else?
I was like going in between the two, but I ultimately decided I wanted to stay in Japan because I feel like I wasn't done yet. Like I felt like there was stuff that I really wanted to do. I was really enjoying like my friends that I made, one of them being Capsule Bunny, who's been on here before. I met her at that time. So it was really fun. And then also really liked the fashion, and everything was just, I don't know, it just felt right at the time.
You mentioned that you felt like you had still things you wanted to do here.
Yeah.
What were some of these things that you wanted to do?
Some of the things I wanted to do was I wanted to try being an idol, which I was able to do, modeling, which I was also able to do. So I feel like I've accomplished quite a lot. And now I feel a little bit like I've, just going by is okay now. I feel like I did everything.
Everything that was on your checklist.
Yeah, everything that was on my major checklist. I think I got it.
So I'm curious about that journey then. So you do your study abroad. You feel like you still want to do these things. You still have this interest in fashion as well that you kind of had growing up. After you finish your study abroad, do you have like a specific plan to come back and kind of try to chase all the dreams you had?
Yeah, so I went back to America and continued studying at university, and I was also taking Japanese lessons like the entire time. So I wanted to be able to speak enough Japanese for jobs and for anything else, which thank goodness I did, because I now work for a Japanese company. So definitely feel like that was another goal that I was able to accomplish. And yeah, I began looking for jobs. I actually came here as an English teacher. And so that was, honestly, I really enjoyed it. I know that some people maybe have like mixed feelings about becoming an English teacher in Japan, but for me personally, I thought it was a pretty decent experience. The only reason why I decided to do something else was my list of goals.
So how did you go after becoming an idol, becoming a model, and now ultimately working in the J fashion industry?
Honestly, it's incredible because it's like I was into modeling and stuff. Even back when I was in America, I like modeled for like a kind of local boutique. And I also did, like at the anime conventions, how brands will like sometimes come and stuff. And I was a model for some of the brands that would come for anime conventions. And now I work on the other side of it, which is really cool. My brand goes to anime conventions and I style models and teach them. So it really is like a full circle moment for me, I think.
I want to talk a little bit more about J fashion. So you said that you started to get interested into this into 5th grade, and that was kind of through the manga and through this dress-up game and discovering Lolita, so to say. I imagine at that time, you see Lolita, you're like, oh, Lolita fashion, that's cute. But as we've now had a few guests on the podcast, including your friend Capsule Bunny, we know that these Harajuku fashion, if I may kind of englobe them into this umbrella term, there are many of them. There are a lot.
Yes.
So when you actually got to Japan and you got to visit Harajuku for the first time, what did you kind of really discover and what did you get really interested in?
I was really into visual kei. And I think that also kind of came from liking Lolita fashion and stuff. Was everything was just so like, at that time when I first came, everything was just over the top. Hair was over the top. Gyaru was also still kind of had a bit of a hold on Japan at the time as well. So being surrounded by just everyone being so dressed to the nines all the time was really fascinating for me. And since I really liked visual kei music, I also dressed in kind of more gothic style as well. So even my Lolita fashion, I liked more gothic styles. I had some sweet outfits as well. But I also wore visual kei fashion sometimes. I even had my hair cut all short and spiky. I've worn basically every fashion under the sun because to me, fashion is just how I'm feeling that day. So when I was experimenting a lot, I was wearing Gyaru, I was wearing visual kei, I was wearing Lolita, I was wearing basically like whatever just came to me at the time. And I still do that now. So even though like I might kind of represent more into certain fashion categories than others, I always love an opportunity to dress in a different way or mix styles together. to make it the most me.
You said fashion for you is kind of how you feel that day.
Yeah.
My impression sometimes is that especially these kind of Harajuku fashion styles are not just fashion, a way to dress, but it's a kind of lifestyle that is kind of tied to it. And so how does it work then if you change lifestyle, so to say, every day? Is this something that a lot of people do, or do people usually stay within one category?
At least for example, like Lolita fashion, they have like what we call like a lifestyle Lolita. So they wear it every single day of their life, and I like to incorporate like Lolita style, like in the way that their house is and everything. And I feel like for me, my fashion is also kind of similar. It's just not quite as like concrete. So my whole aesthetic, everything is pink, black, white, and gray. Those are the only colors that I wear. And my room is also those colors. And I think even if I branch out into different fashions, I feel like my color palette is always kind of there.
Interesting. The color palette is one thing. I imagine also from my understanding, there's like a lot of details in the clothes that kind of signal to others it's this style or not this style.
Yeah, that's definitely true.
Yeah. So when you discover this, for you, it was like, oh, there are so many of them. It's not just Lolita. I can play around. I can express myself. How did you find a community when you kind of arrived here in Japan? Did you kind of get to interact with them a little bit and kind of see how basically the birthplace of these trends and lifestyles are doing it?
Yeah. So when I first came to like Harajuku, for example, like everything was very colorful and big and just very different. And then Shibuya, for example, was still very Gyaru at the time. So it was like a lot of the brands were still like, it would be like rock or like kind of punk style, but it'd be like Gyaru inspired.
I see.
Where Harajuku was a little bit more like pink and cutesy. So I really like that, like the neighborhoods also like represent their own. I know that like Shinjuku is very famous for like jirai-kei and stuff now. So I think that there's still a bit of like truth that like where you build your community, like where you often visit is the kind of fashion you're also going to see.
Interesting.
So, and I think that's kind of true for America as well. Like, for example, if you're really into like, I don't know, like back in my day, everyone really liked skateboarding. And so they'd go to the skate park. And so everyone wanted to dress like skaters and stuff like that. And if you are more into city kind of style, then there's that. Like New York is kind of famous for quite an array. And like if you like go to Manhattan, it's like a certain kind of style. Where if you go to Brooklyn, it's also a type of style. I think Tokyo is like that as well.
So the subcultures are kind of spread through the neighborhoods, but a lot of them seem to all kind of still tie back to Harajuku, where it kind of starts and then Harajuku is too crowded, let's move it a little bit over there.
Yeah, definitely.
A lot of these kind of come disappear. You mentioned that when you arrived, Gyaru was still having a hold onto Shibuya a little bit. Nowadays, I feel like Gyaru is kind of mostly a thing of the past. But how did you start perceiving these with the trends coming up and some dying down? And how to know if one of them is kind of here to stay in a way? Because Lolita has been here since the beginning, and that is kind of still staying strong, so to say.
I think actually Gyaru is kind of coming back. I've noticed a lot more like kind of Gyaru shops popping up. I think the Y2K aesthetic in general is kind of pushing Gyaru more towards coming back. But when things become popular, other things kind of start to become not as popular anymore. So as much as like I do think that there's still quite strong holds, like for example, Lolita, I think that the reason why Lolita has had such longevity is simply because it's just never really changed that much. Like the people who like it still like it, have liked it always then. And it's because it's kind of like the same sort of vibe. It's Lolita. You immediately know exactly what it is. The problem with some other fashions is they start to move, like migrate a little bit too much, change a bit too much. The trends change a bit too much, that it's not as recognizable as the same fashion that it used to be. So while Lolita will have its own trend cycles, and I'm not saying that like Lolita's one note or anything like that at all, because Lolita has its own trends, it still is like very, this is Lolita, where other things is like, oh, it kind of looks like this, but it kind of looks like that. I'm not really sure anymore.
You mentioned that Lolita is recognizable and that others sometimes are changing and adapting to trends too quickly for them to kind of really grasp a hold of the community.
Yeah.
So as an outsider, I probably can't recognize any of them, except maybe jirai that we're going to talk about, because we've got a colleague that dresses jirai. So I'm a little bit educated in this. But other than that, it just feels very difficult from the outside to tell what's what. And it just all kind of ends up being, oh, this is Harajuku fashion.
Yeah, exactly. So, that's true.
What would you say for people that, like myself, don't know much about this? They can kind of pay attention to realize, oh, there's a lot going on here. It's a big part of this kind of these subcultures here in Japan. What makes it so interesting for you?
I really like trends, and I've always been kind of interested in history and fashion history. So for me, it's really fun to see the differences. And even if it's a fashion I personally do not wear, I do like to see the evolution of them. And I think that fashion says a lot about people's thought process at that time in history. So, and like, for example, there's been studies that say that when the economy isn't as good, high heels are more prevalent.
Interesting.
So like when the economy isn't as good, heels are usually shorter.
Wow.
I mean, sorry, when the economy is good, heels are shorter. And when the economy is not so good, the heels are taller. So there's been like a study on this. And I think that sort of stuff is like really, really fascinating. And I think it can be said for Japanese fashion as well. So the way that like certain fashions become popular, I think also has to do with what people are thinking about at that time and why they become trendy.
So one of these that kind of became really popular and trendy relatively recently is jirai-kei.
Yes.
So I think that came from 2020. I was reading a little bit about this, and it's quite interesting because the word itself, jirai, seems to have been used before in a kind of relatively derogatory way. Literally translates as landmine.
Yes.
To talk about people that are maybe prone to emotional outbursts and instability. And that kind of then became tied to a whole kind of fashion, somewhat lifestyle trend too. What's the story behind this jirai fashion trend, and how did it become so popular, and where is it now today?
So this is all my opinion and just like what I think. And if people disagree or find something else that they think, that's also totally fine. So personally, I think that the reason why jirai-kei became so popular at the time was because the girly trend of larm, which also had a very like pink and black color palette, was starting to die down, and that left room for more bolder styles. Jirai-kei is still very girly and still very cute and still very feminine, while also having this kind of dark atmosphere and dark accessories about it. So I think that before jirai, although there was still like visual kei and there was still like styles that are more gothic, that just wasn't the style at the time. Like bold, strong styles weren't that popular. But now, like with jirai-kei rising, they were popular at that time. I think people had a lot more just like dark and negative emotions that they wanted to express on the outside. And of course, I also think some people just think it's cute.
But it's interesting because it ties into COVID as well.
Yes.
That's kind of when this picked up.
Yeah.
How do you see this trend unfold? Where does it start nowadays? Is it usually coming from brands that are kind of creating new lines of clothes and calling it something? Is it from a community that is styling things in a new way and that becomes trendy, and then the brands pick up on it and they label things as jirai-kei? Like, what's the cycle for these?
So I think basically the start of jirai-kei starts in Shinjuku with the Toyoko kids. So the Toyoko kids are basically like homeless youth, for lack of a better word, that kind of all meet together in this area in Kabukicho. And this is what I mean by like COVID had a really, really strong impact on it. During COVID, there was a lot more cases of domestic violence, being like basically trapped with your family, and just basically uncertainty with the world, what's going to happen. And that in young people is really, really scary, really frightening. And so a lot of people from the countryside moved to Tokyo without really much of I don't know, anything's better than where I'm from. So a lot of the Toyoko kids had nowhere else to go, but had a lot of bonding with each other and a lot of like fun memories that they could make in their little community. And a lot of, I think the trend picked up on these kind of fashionable but edgy youth. And like, I think from there, people just picked up on it. You know, it became something that brands could capitalize off of because it became trendy, even though it came from a kind of dark area and a lot of uncertainty and stuff. Kind of like a emo fashion, I guess. When I was in high school, the emo style was really, really popular. And I think that honestly, jirai-kei and emo have a lot in common.
Interesting. Which are like also different eras. I feel like the emo was also when I was in high school quite relatively popular, but nowadays maybe less so. So jirai-kei kind of coming from the Toyoko kids, these runaway children, and then basically becomes popular and then is capitalized upon by companies that kind of see an opportunity to, make money out of it.
Yes, basically.
How does this then evolve? Because where does the name jirai-kei come from? Landmine, basically. Was this kind of something the community chose for themselves? Was it something the brands kind of associated with? Or how did they decide to call this trend this way?
So this is just the way that I have heard and interpreted the story before. But basically, jirai, as you mentioned, it means landmine. And it was used as a derogatory word, usually from men who would go and meet these like runaway girls at like con cafes or hostess clubs or engaging in illegal activities on the streets. And basically when people have a lot of emotions and they explode because they don't know how to contain themselves, it becomes a landmine. So then they kind of reclaimed the word and said like, oh yeah, I'm jirai-kei. So it's like a bit of like a reclaiming of a word that was used to negatively define them.
Which is interesting because it brings a lot of associations with it, right?
Yes.
Or at least in Japan, when people talk about jirai people, they associate what you mentioned, sometimes illegal activities, mental health issues, instability and such with them. But now, as it becomes a trend, in a way, the people wearing this are maybe broadcasting some of these traits, or is this a misconception of the trend, how it is today?
I think it really depends on the person. I think that there are some people who want to look more jirai and will engage in these things because they think that it will make them more jirai. And then I think that there are other people who genuinely just like the fashion. Like they know where it comes from, but they still find it cute. I think the main thing is research. It's good to know where these trends come from when you get into them, because you might be labeled something that you may not want to be labeled as. And if you're just wearing it because you think it's cute, that's awesome. But be prepared for the fact that you might get some kind of negative connotations with it. And some people kind of want those negative connotations and want to like look edgy and stuff. Like I said, it's a fashion that was basically worn by teenagers as a start. And a lot of the thing with youth fashion is rebellion. It was the same with Gyaru. It's been the same for basically any kind of alternative fashion. It is a way to rebel against society in an easy way that doesn't involve really hurting anyone.
With a trend that kind of comes from runaway children and that embodies a lot of like mental health discussion and stigma, do you feel like this has kind of started more conversations around the topics? Like, oh, well, this fashion trend is becoming popular. It comes from this. Oh, maybe we should do something about the runaway kids or about mental health issues in Japan.
I know that there have been a lot of like some organizations and nonprofits that have tried to make like basically cafes and stuff for the runaway children to go to. But unfortunately, I've also seen a lot of people trying to like party with stuff. And I just want people to remember that they're usually kids, they're usually minors. And I've often seen on social media, like a lot of people coming to Japan and coming to the Toyoko and being like, wow, this is so much fun. Like everyone's drinking and partying. And I feel like they just don't understand what is going on behind the scenes. They just see the party and the crazy around it. But it's a lot of children who also like need help. So I really hope that with social media and with these kinds of things, that mental health in Japan just gets better in general, and that people are more willing to like speak up and help people in need.
Have you been able to interact with those kids yourself?
A little bit, but not so much. When I was an idol, there was like some like kids that would come from more like a bad home, because there's a lot of younger idols as well. So I honestly just being like a friend to them, I think is the best. But I feel like people also just need to, be aware with caution in any situation. I think that where like, I don't know how I think that people just need to be aware of what's happening and just hopefully everything will calm down in that area.
Not just see them as a source of entertainment for their own kind of enjoyment, but like these children are in need of help, and we shouldn't be they're not like social media content.
Yeah, but, exactly.
So to go back to jirai, then it's important to understand kind of where it comes from and what it stands for if you don't want to be associated with a stigma and so on. The story behind jirai is very tied to Japanese culture, an issue that is present in Japan, but the trend has now also kind of been picked up overseas as well. Mm-hmm. Do you see some differences with how jirai is kind of done here versus in America, for example?
I think that there are some differences. I feel like in the West, well, the communities are a lot smaller. And I feel like they don't have like this, like the Toyoko attached to it. Mm-hmm. So they can wear the fashion without really the stigma that goes with it. So I just want people to like remember that there is this kind of stigma in Japan. So if you wear it in Japan, you might get looked at a little bit differently than if you wear it overseas. But I think that that's one of the big factors is a lot of people will have like house parties or like just going out and shopping and stuff. And of course, like in Japan, like jirai girls will do that as well. But it doesn't have the nightlife connotation that it does here.
So you said you like to dress however you feel. What are some of the fashion styles and lifestyles that you kind of like or have come to like a lot while being here in Japan?
Well, jirai-kei is one of them, and ryo-san-gata, which ryo-san-gata is very similar to jirai-kei, but it actually comes from like idol culture. Mm-hmm. So it's very similar but different. And ryo-san-gata means mass produced. Mm-hmm. So it started with girls that all wanted to like look the same so that they could take pictures with like their favorite idols and stuff without being identified. Like if you blur the face, everyone looks the same.
Really? Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it came from like Johnny's and stuff originally, but it kind of has become like the light version of jirai as far as like clothing and stuff goes.
So the clothing style, the color palette is very similar, but kind of where it comes from and what it's trying to achieve is different.
Completely, yeah.
And so ryo-san-gata is one that you're into, and then jirai-kei.
Yeah, and I also like more like ballet core sort of styles, which have been trending lately. And I do like Korean fashion as well, considering that like I am a K-pop fan, so I see K fashion a lot as well. And these days, Korean fashion is also quite trendy in Japan, so it's very easy to find. So I'm into everything. And then also with Y2K coming back, I've been falling in love with Gyaru again.
You just mentioned ballet core.
Yes.
I feel like the word core has been used a lot recently. We talked about it just before we started recording, to kind of attach to any sort of a style or core aesthetic, so to say. How is this done in the West versus Japan? Because the word core here is not really used in Japanese.
Yeah, I've been seeing the word core more in Japanese, but even things that have like an English name, like for example, in the West, we have like angel core. And if you think of angel core, you usually are thinking like very cute, like kind of sexy white, like angel kind of motifs, maybe a little bit like Lolita inspired kind of vibes. And then in Japan right now, angel core is often being confused for like wish core. So what would be considered like wish core overseas is angel core here.
So very, very confusing for someone that is not into this. But so that term is being used more, maybe similar to what in Japan is used as kei. Right?
Yeah, visual kei, oshare-kei, everything was kei.
So for you on your personal journey, you've gotten interested in all of those, but not only just as a hobby and lifestyle, but you started working for one of the iconic brands of the field. I think, ACDC RAG.
Yes.
Can you tell me a little bit about how you even got into working with this brand in the first place?
Yeah, so I've been working with ACDC RAG for about 3 years. I mainly work in content creation, marketing, and I do styling for the photo shoots. And I also am a photography assistant. And I do international communications, so going to conventions and overseas events. And yeah, it's awesome. And basically, how I got started was I sent in my resume and I had an interview just like any other job, really. But I really wanted to show my skills. And I really wanted to show that I do know quite a lot about fashion. I know a lot about styling, and I do know more or less about content creation. I'm not perfect, but I think that I've been able to really do well in the field that I'm in. So yeah, working at ACDC RAG is just really awesome for me.
Can you tell me a little bit about the brand itself and kind of what it represents into this field of J fashion?
Yeah, so ACDC RAG is basically like one of the first, I think it's the second shop to be on Takashita Street that is like a fashion brand. And it's the one that has stayed there in like the same place.
So Takashita Street is that one main street in Harajuku that everyone kind of knows or recognizes a little bit from the photos. Yeah?
Yes, exactly. So ACDC RAG, the original store, is the second oldest shop on Takashita Street. And it has been around since the 1980s.
Oh.
Yeah, it originally started by our current boss's father. And he was basically just like a street vendor for like jewelry and stuff. And then he started doing like remake fashion and eventually got into dancewear. And from dancewear, we realized a lot of fashionable people like dancing. So it became a Harajuku brand after that.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So what was the experience like for you kind of being into J fashion and wearing it and so on to so to say go behind the scenes and actually start working for one of the brands that is working on those trends, creating the new collections and such? How did you experience kind of looking at the business side of things?
It really changes your perspective, I think, quite a lot because business versus what you like are quite different. So ACDC RAG, we do try to design things with actually not thinking too much about trends. We try to make everything as our designers' ideas, really. We have 3 designers, and all 3 are basically like a tanto in a different field. Mm-hmm. So it's really cool because we get super different collections each and every time because all 3 of our designers are really, really unique. And I think that when they create something, we do try to say like maybe this is trendy right now, but sometimes we also just take a gamble and say that people are saying they like this, so let's try this, even if it isn't something that is like registered as trendy. So we try to really go for what the customers like and what our fans like, but also try to see what can we make trendy.
That must be difficult.
Yeah, it's really hard.
So it feels like the trends come more from the community in a way, and then the brands adopt them. But when the brand tries to impose something, it can be tricky.
Yeah. So for ACDC RAG, I think that'll like what pushed us into being, I guess, on like in the first part of the trend was the tracksuit trend that was kind of started maybe 2 or 3 years ago. And the tracksuits really like blew up. Like ACDC RAG has really like made quite a lot since then. But then with every trend that comes to power, then trends start to die, right? So it's like finding that next momentum.
Is it possible to categorize the fashion from ACDC RAG? Does it kind of belong to one of those J fashion categories, or just in general provides to everyone?
It caters to everyone.
Yeah.
Like any kind of J fashion you could possibly want, you can find something at ACDC RAG. Like even if you aren't like into super crazy fashion, like they have more like subdued stuff as well. And then if you want really, really colorful decora fashion, there's that. If you want gothic fashion, there's that. More Lolita style, like anything.
When you see the behind the scenes like that, I imagine you also get to interact with a lot of actors in the scene. Mm-hmm. What kind of interesting encounters have you had the opportunity to make during your time there?
One of a huge fashion inspiration for me when I was like a teenager was Akira. She is a model that was in Kara magazine. And I used to read Kara magazine a really, really long time ago, like from 2012 and onward. I really liked this fashion magazine. And Akira also wore like a lot of like kind of visual kei inspired clothes. And she modeled for ACDC RAG, and I got to like meet her and work with her twice now. It was just such like a dream come true for me because I really, really admired her style quite a lot. So that was probably one of the coolest experiences for me.
Meeting one of your heroes kind of does that a little bit.
Yeah, she's really wonderful.
I imagine you get to see a lot of kind of data as well on the market and change. And you mentioned now a couple of times that when a new trend rise, another trend dies. What do those cycles look like for brands? Are we talking things coming up and dying every 6 months? Is it years? Is it...
It has gotten significantly shorter in the 2020s. So before, a trend cycle roughly lasted about... It was like 10 years before social media. A trend cycle would last around 10 years. Then social media pushed it to like maybe 5. And now it's like, it might be gone within a year. So it's the 1-year trends are being called micro trends. So they are really, really popular and then they fall really, really quickly. So like, I guess a good example might be like the Labubu would be like a micro trend. I don't know though. Labubu could stay. Like
But I feel like these micro trends that kind of works if it's an accessory. It's a trend to have this accessory. But if it's a whole lifestyle, it doesn't really make so much sense, right? Because you're not gonna suddenly change your entire wardrobe, decorate your entire room to be, for example, jirai.
Yeah.
And then suddenly nobody else is jirai anymore, and therefore you have to change everything again.
Yeah, I mean, some people do. But I feel like for the most part, if you're getting into J fashion, because J fashion takes a lot of work to enjoy. You have to do a lot of research because usually these trends come from somewhere. Getting them is quite difficult. You need like a shopping service if you live overseas, or some brands don't ship internationally. It's also quite an expensive hobby. So I often feel like people who are getting into J fashion tend to be like in it to win it.
So they kind of commit to one.
Yeah.
Anyway.
But I feel like because of that also, they're very like protective of the fashion. And because of that, it can be difficult for new people to come in because it is kind of expensive, difficult to acquire. And because sometimes people tend to be very like gatekeepy about it, I find that people who are new to the fashion may not get the kind of help and support to fully enjoy the fashion. And because of that, they leave the fashion.
Is this the same in Japan and overseas, or are there some notable differences?
I've never really noticed this happening overseas, but I mean, in Japan, but I've noticed this overseas quite a lot.
So the overseas kind of members of the community tend to be more strict about what it requires to be a proper jirai-kei or ryo-sangata, whereas in Japan, it's a lot more loose and so on.
Yeah, I feel like in Japan, a lot of emphasis for a lot of these fashions is hair and makeup and not actually the clothes quite as much.
Oh.
So, but I feel like a lot of Westerners see the clothes as a lot more important than hair and makeup. And so, for example, like if I see a girl just wearing like a big t-shirt, but she's got full jirai makeup, I know that girl is jirai. Same with Gyaru, even like visual kei and stuff is like if you have the hair and makeup, even if it's like your off day and you're just going to the convenience store, I can typically recognize what you probably wear when you're not just going to the convenience store.
Wow. So what are some of these key differences in the hair and makeup? Is
Um,
this where the rules get stricter a little bit?
Yeah, I guess. Jirai-kei has a big, heavy influence on the namida bukuro, or some people might also know it as the Korean word eggyosal, which is like your tear bags.
Okay.
And for jirai-kei and ryosangata in particular, it's trying to make it like as puffy looking as possible. And some girls will even get injections.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. That's fun.
So it's the eye bag thing is especially prevalent in jirai-kei. In Gyaru, you might recognize by the big white stripes here, like the white strip on the nose, or bringing the eyeliner down like super low with the big eyelashes. So they have like similarities, but also are quite different and distinct.
Do you feel that also in Japan, because a lot of these subcultures find communities in physical spaces, in Harajuku, if you go around there, you can always find someone that you can relate to. Whereas in America, perhaps everyone is more isolated.
Yeah, a lot more.
So their community might only be based online, and therefore their only way of really feel that belonging is to do it the right way.
Yeah.
Because there's no one to exchange with, no one to mingle with, and no one else to kind of connect about this.
Yeah, I think that definitely could be a factor. The isolation is definitely like, I think, quite difficult. And then also, if the only time that you can see everyone else is when you go to a meetup, you really want to dress to impress, right? I feel like everyone has that kind of like feeling like, oh, I really, really want to dress perfectly because I'm meeting everyone. And I feel like there's a lot of pressure on people in foreign fashion communities, a lot more than in Japan. Because I feel like in Japan, it's so easy to meet people that like it that you're just like, hey, like, let's go to lunch, okay? Where in America, usually, or not just in America, but like Europe, everywhere, is like, on this day, we will meet and we will do this as a one big community. So it's a lot more of like a proper outing than just like a casual lunch.
You mentioned discovering Lolita fashion when you were in 5th grade, but I feel like growing up, J fashion was never really so big, at least where I grew up in France.
Yeah.
But now we see a lot more of them overseas. When did this kind of overseas trend kind of really develop more?
I think social media was the biggest factor in it. Like once Instagram really started taking off and like hashtags were being used, because back in my day, Lolita was often seen only on LiveJournal. And LiveJournal like eventually became Facebook. And then from Facebook is when groups kind of started forming a little bit more to like be able to interact outside and be able to go and meet and have meetups. But I think nowadays is like fashion is explosive because it's so easy to learn about different fashions now, where before it was like hard to find translations. It was like it's like if your friend went to Japan, you might be able to like learn something.
So going back to now your role at ACDC RAG, what does it mean for a historical brand like this? Are there trends and what the design is working on now still kind of primarily done to focus on the Japanese market? Or is there like more of consideration for now, oh, well, we have an overseas fan base as well. Now let's think about how they could incorporate those overseas.
So I think for ACDC RAG in particular, we do have a really, really strong foreign market. And we do care about Japanese trends as well. So I think that what we usually kind of do is a little bit of both. So like this collection is like, what would we think that foreign market might like? What might the Japanese market might like? And try to compare like trends that are maybe meeting in the middle a little bit, seeing what could be potentially popular for both. But one of the really, really positive outcomes of having such a large international fan base is we were able to actually be one of the like Japanese brands, like kawaii fashion brands that has plus size options, which is really, really rare and hard to find in Japanese alternative fashion brands. So I think that now even more people can wear kawaii fashion and wear ACDC RAG as well. So I think that was one of the best like outcomes of noticing that we have such a wonderful, large like population of people that like us.
When you communicate the brands and the products, do you have to do a lot of communication as well on the backgrounds of each of those trends? We talked about the somewhat sensitive nature of like jirai-kei, for example. Is this something that you have to then communicate with the product to let people know about this, or is the focus purely on the aesthetics?
So it can't ever be purely based on the aesthetics because there are just certain things that are like kind of triggering. Like the use of like a lot of menhera things in Japanese clothing is quite prevalent, but when we convert it to an international market, there's just certain like imagery that we can't have on clothes.
Can you elaborate a little bit? Also explain briefly maybe what menhera is.
Yeah, so menhera was originally like a kind of derogatory word used for people with mental illnesses and has kind of evolved into its own, I guess, like aesthetic. Yeah. So part of it usually includes a lot of like medical items or like the use of like pills and stuff like in the fashion and stuff. So for example, at ACDC RAG, like we try not to show anything that could have like self-harm and things in it because it could be potentially triggering to people.
That's also another very sensitive one then, I guess, pills and self-harm.
Yeah.
If you're trying to not show these to an overseas audience, I imagine that these are kind of commonly being shown here in Japan.
Yeah, often.
How is that then perceived within the community? Do these become talking points? I mean, talking about taking pills and harming yourself, that's it gets to a point where maybe people's lives are at risk too, right?
Yeah. So I feel like one of the big problems is that some people see those as healing. It's like a reminder of like where you were at that time or where you came from. And to other people, it's not healing because they might still be there. And you're never going to fully have communication or understanding on that because it is so involved with how you personally feel about stuff. So because of that is why we personally probably wouldn't put certain stuff on a shirt. Now, pills have become like kind of cute and have been used quite a lot, and even on ACDC RAG design. So pills are a little bit of different, but like for example, like wrist cutting or something is definitely something we probably shouldn't have on an ACDC RAG item.
But other brands may use that as part of the fashion.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
Does it sometimes lead to a sort of a normalization of these mental health issues as opposed to leading to like more serious conversations about maybe the person needs help? That in a way, if the design is so present and it's like, oh, it's normal to harm yourself or to make it look like it's normal, and that it kind of just brushes off the serious issues that is underlying that.
Some people think that. Again, I think it's all open into interpretation. It depends on what the person sees. It's art, essentially, at the end of the day. So while some people can go to an art museum and look at something that other people might consider horrifying and feel nothing, I think that certain aspects of fashion is also like that. And fashion, because it is also an art form, I think that while people can wear whatever they want, I think you just also have to be mindful of everyone at the end of the day. So just like how I think that people just need to be mindful of what they are projecting and also what for outsiders to think what that person might also be feeling. I think that it's better to just let everyone kind of be on their fashion journey the way that they need to be on their fashion journey. And if you do happen to have a friend or someone that's struggling, I hope that you can find a way to help them.
Do these conversations happen as well in the offices of ACDC RAG or other brands, that when talking with designers about the designs we put out there and the messaging behind, these things are being kind of considered?
For the most part, ACDC RAG's fans are older. They typically tend to be in their 20s and 30s. So while we might say like, oh, maybe this is like maybe not good to put on an item, but we also like to be daring. And so we do like to have some kind of bolder items for those that do like it. And we don't want to try to restrict our artists too much. So as long as the art can be interpreted by someone to find healing for themselves, then we do our best to put it out.
You mentioned that the customers are older, and then you said 2030s. I was expecting like a higher number. So does this mean that a lot of these trends are also kind of have a large fan base within basically teenagers that are like in the high school years or just entering university?
Mm-hmm.
Is that kind of like the larger customer base?
So we try to appeal to younger people. The thing is that, like I said, J fashion can be relatively expensive, and it can be relatively like stuff that people have kind of stuck with for a while. So it kind of comes down to what you're willing to purchase and how much money you're willing to spend on said item. So for example, someone in their 20s and 30s are typically already working and are comfortable spending their own money on stuff that they like. However, for younger teenagers, a lot of the time it's mother and father's money, unless they maybe work like a little part-time job. But even then, it's going to take a lot more to save up to buy one item. Where because of that, I think ACDC RAG is a relatively lower price point, but it is still like a Japanese brand. So as much as we would love to have a younger demographic, and they do come, and we are even working on like a kids collection.
Oh, cool.
It's very like exciting that we're being able to open up to even a younger demographic so that everyone can be interested in Japanese fashion.
What are some of the trends that you're excited for now that are kind of developing here in 2026?
Oh, I'm really liking like the Heisei retro kind of vibe. So like, like Gyaru was like most popular during Heisei era. And Heisei retro is basically those trends coming back, but like a little bit more polished. And so I really like the use of like all the polka dots that they have right now and just like the overlying like 2000s aesthetic. I'm really into the Y2K, so I'm happy it's back.
So is this kind of coming back, or is this new interpretation of something that was before?
A little bit of both. I think that with every single trend cycle, when it comes back, it's always slightly different than its original run. And we've seen this in stuff like the 80s, like when 80s kind of came back and stuff. It's like never exactly how it was, because usually like nowadays when I see the 2000s, like especially makeup and stuff, nowadays there's like beauty gurus and like, all these like makeup tutorials and stuff. So everyone's makeup is a lot more polished than it was back then.
These trend cycles, when you work in fashion, I imagine you need to anticipate the production cycle. So you need to design, produce, have the things in store by the time when it's really in demand.
Yeah.
So what kind of cycles are we talking about? Like, how do you look at the market and see like, okay, there's something happening here with, let's say, Heisei Retro, and probably in 6 months it's going to blow up. We need to start working on this like quickly.
Yeah.
What kind of time frame are we talking about?
I start researching trends. Like I'm always researching trends like all the time, like even as a hobby, like outside of work too. And so when I see something that I'm like, oh, I think that this might do well, we should get in on it, I send a message and like explain what it is, why we should get into it. And after that, it's just kind of like seeing if everyone else thinks that it is a good idea or not. So certain things are put into fruition and other things are not. But I'm hoping for some more use of polka dots.
How do you differentiate from something that might become a trend and maybe lasting a few years versus something that might just be like a quick social media buzz that someone will, like it's going to blow up for months and you're going to see it all over the internet and suddenly it's just going to disappear?
I honestly think part of it involves a little bit of simplicity. I think stuff that tends to be like simpler, easy to wear all the time, tends to last longer. Is it as interesting? Maybe not. But as far as like constant buyers, that'll always be there. A good example is the iconic Chanel flat bag. That bag has been around forever and has never really lost popularity, even with Chanel increasing prices. The item is iconic, easy to wear. Those are the two things that are the most important in fashion. And so even when it comes to Japanese fashion, things that are iconic and not necessarily easy to wear, but easy to match, things are the stuff that's going to last a long time. So like, for example, the old school lolita dresses are coming back and prints are kind of falling slightly more out of fashion. There's still some cute prints, But the problem is that with the prints is that you have to wear other stuff basically in the collection, where a dress that is like one color, maybe two colors, there's so many different ways that you can wear that dress.
Yeah, so how easy it is to mix and match with other pieces you may have in your wardrobe already, as opposed to, oh, you can only wear this if you have the full set.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I feel like certain stuff like that is what is going to keep fashion items around for a long time.
You gave the example of Chanel with their iconic flap bag. Have these Japanese subculture brands ever really collaborated or ventured into this kind of more mainstream fashion scene? Or is it something it's like, no, we are the Harajuku, so to say, fashion, and we kind of stay within this neighborhood and we have this community and that's what we do?
Usually brands will collaborate with other, like, I guess, pop culture things, such as like, for example, ACDC RAG did a collaboration with Hatsune Miku. So a very iconic, like, Vocaloid. Like, if you're into anime or Japanese pop culture, you've probably seen or heard of Hatsune Miku. But usually a lot of Japanese brands are very small and actually, to people's surprise, don't make as much money as you think they do.
Interesting.
So a lot of the brands are really, really quite small, actually. And so because of that, collaborating with like Chanel or Gucci would be like almost impossible, honestly.
The brands are very small. When we look at the list of brands or stores, like, what do we imagine? Is it just basically like a small office of 10 people working on this that kind of handle?
That's what ACDC RAG's like, pretty much.
Okay, wow. Such a historical brand is still such a relatively small team. Plus, basically, I imagine all the store staff.
Yeah, basically, I think full-time employees are about 12.
Wow.
Yeah. And then we do have like some part-time employees for the warehouse and for the shop.
That's a much smaller operation than I imagined.
And a lot of Japanese brands are like this. And I feel like a lot of people get like this big misconception about Japanese brands that it's like we're huge conglomerates and stuff like that. And there are, of course, brands that are bigger than others, ones that make a lot more money than others. But for most of people's favorite Japanese brands, it's relatively small.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, that changes the balance a lot with kind of how you can plan, what you can actually do, the resources you have at your disposal to adapt. And that makes a gamble on such a Heisei retro trend a much bigger decision to make than if it's a big, let's just try it.
Yeah, exactly.
Interesting.
So gambles can be quite a make it or break it sort of time, I guess. Yeah.
How come, in your perspective, from what you've seen, these companies haven't developed further despite the audience kind of significantly growing and even overseas?
So ACDC RAG has actually grown quite a lot. When I first started working there, we only had like 6 full-time employees.
Oh, so you doubled in size.
Yeah, we doubled in size.
Wow.
Yeah. So I think that one of the things with a lot of these Japanese fashion brands is they don't focus on their overseas market as much as they should. And there's so many fans of Japanese fashion overseas that often get overlooked because for a lot of Japanese brands is that they don't have the resources and they don't know how to look for the resources. So for example, we need someone to work in marketing that speaks English and Japanese and can live in Japan, and like they don't understand like the visa process and like all this sort of stuff, right? So they're like, oh, that's a bit of annoying, I don't want to deal with it. So they just don't hire foreign staff, meaning that they're still kind of limited to Japan.
Interesting. Yeah. So what are the things that you would like to see change in that industry that you would like them to start implementing moving forward into the future?
Honestly, I think a lot more brands would benefit having foreign employees. I feel like there just aren't enough, and the markets are incredibly different, and both of them are incredibly diverse. There's a lot to learn, and language barriers, of course, culture gaps. I think every brand can benefit from, like, whether it's an overseas company or not, can benefit from just having different perspectives, different outlooks, and of course, different languages available.
Yeah. The lack of information can be a challenge. You mentioned earlier kind of finding and looking for resources. Do you have any recommendations where people can find information about the trends, about the history, about the brands that may be limited in English at least?
I think on Instagram, there's a lot of like Instagram magazines, which are always really fun. I know that there's a few for like jirai-kei. There's like the jirai-joshi like page and stuff like that. There's quite a few. So I feel like looking at the hashtags will help because someone's probably translated it into English already. And YouTube, because people like me like to yap about this kind of stuff. So now it's easier than ever to find this information. Like when I was in high school, I was like digging through LiveJournal and stuff, and you just don't have to do that anymore.
So you started your own content creation journey as well, talking a lot about these fashion trends. What kind of spurred the desire to get started to make content about this?
At first I was just like really wanted to show like my outfits. I started mainly posting like Lolita outfits that I made and stuff. And it just kind of became other fashion that I also like. And then I just kept uploading it. And then it became like, okay, well, I just want to show more of my life and more of my life and more of my life. And then now it's everything. Yeah. It's fashion. It's my Oshi. It's my behind the scenes. It's my cat. It's whatever I want it to be now.
Your Oshi. I imagine you refer to your oshikatsu.
Yes.
Let's talk about this. You mentioned that we would get into that a little bit, but we haven't touched upon this yet. So what exactly do you do?
Everything. So basically, oshikatsu, in Japanese, your oshi is like, I guess in the K-pop terms, you would call it your bias, right? And katsu means activities. So it's basically like bias activities, things that support your bias, your idol, your favorite anime character, your favorite character. There's a misconception that oshikatsu has to be about idols. It does not. It's basically for anything that's your favorite. If you like love Hello Kitty and everything that you do is about Hello Kitty's your oshi.
Okay.
Yes.
So when did you get started with this and what is your oshi then?
Oh my goodness. Okay. So I got into my favorite group, N-hyphen, about in 2023. But I have been a K-pop fan since I was in high school, and I was a Visual Kei fan even before that. So I've always been a fangirl at heart, so to speak. And basically, I was really into Visual Kei in high school. My friend was really into K-pop. So we often showed each other like videos and stuff. And then we ended up kind of liking the same stuff. We both liked Visual Kei and we both liked K-pop. And then over time, I just got more and more into it. And then I kind of took a little bit of a break from K-pop a little bit around like maybe for my freshman year of university. And then around my sophomore year, my second year of university, I got really back into it again with the debut of Blackpink and Twice.
And so what does it mean for your oshikatsu nowadays?
Now it's pretty much mostly in hyphen with a little bit of some extra groups sprinkled in there. I still like Twice. I still like all of the groups that I used to like, and I still support them. And I was finally able to see one of my like originals from the group SHINee. I really like SHINee. They're quite old now, but yeah, one of my bias, Taemin, he's solo now, so I was able to see him 2 years ago, which was cool.
Is it oshikatsu something? Is there something that it can be compared to in the West, or?
Fangirling.
Okay.
It's like basically it can be anything. It's so broad. It's like posting on Instagram about your favorite oshi could be considered oshikatsu. We also say like oshigoto, which is a Japanese kind of like dad joke, saying like oshi and then goto, which means work. So working, like doing oshi work. Yeah. So going to pop-ups or lives or meet and greets or like whatever, that's like still working.
Are there like misconceptions around this that you kind of sometimes see that if you tell people that you do oshikatsu, maybe they start having ideas that are not what you're referring to?
I feel like, at least in the West, liking something to a certain degree is really like looked down upon, is seen as like childish and like weird even, but it's not really like that in Japan. It's like if you like something a lot, you just kind of like something a lot. You're a big fan of something. But a lot of like people in the West, when you get to a certain age, you're supposed to take down the posters of your favorite band man. You're supposed to, you know, keeping a little photo card of some idol on your bag. That's like embarrassing. Why would you do that? But that's just not how it is here.
So what is it like here in Japan? How is it kind of perceived? Is there like a community of people that do oshikatsu for the same oshi, basically?
Yeah. So actually, at least in the K-pop fandom, every fandom, the idols give us a name. So like I stand in hyphen. So our like fandom name is Enjin. And so you meet like other Enjins and you all go out and you do stuff and you go to the concert together. And basically in every single K-pop group, like the girl group Twice, their fandom name is Once. So that's what you're referred to as. I'm sure that people might be familiar with like BTS. They have the ARMY, BTS ARMY. So that's the fandom name. And the idol group basically will announce it like shortly after debut. And it's like a whole thing.
Also, the idol group chooses basically their fandom group's name ahead of time, and it becomes this sort of mutual relationship in a way between the fan base and the idol.
Yeah, and it's really, I think that there's some good, like a lot of good comes from everyone having a specific name. One, like if someone saw my photo card on my bag or whatever, and they're like, oh, Enji, and I would know automatically, like, oh, you also like them. You know, we call each other by that name. But also, it kind of helps the idols that they don't have to like remember like certain fans' names and stuff. They're like, Enjin.
So they know who is a fan of theirs and not.
Yeah.
How is that for you, kind of doing oshikatsu, but also you mentioned you've been an idol before.
Yeah.
So you've been kind of on both sides of the coin. Did you have your own kind of oshikatsu group when you were an idol?
I had a few. Unfortunately, my idol career was relatively short-lived, but the fans that did come, maybe we should get a fandom name. I don't know. We didn't have one. I had few, so I could remember everyone's name pretty easily. And it was a lot of fun. Definitely very different being on I was on a really small level group, like the Japanese Chika Idol circuit.
So underground idols.
Yeah. So it was definitely, I'm sure, different. And because I was like in a girl group, I had mostly male fans. But I did have some female fans that would also come and like see me from overseas and stuff too, which is like, it was really cool. If anyone remembers me from that time, thank you for coming.
So now that you kind of have been on that side and are in the fandom group base, how important are these fan groups and this oshikatsu for the groups? The examples you gave, like Blackpink, Twice, or BTS, they're huge.
Yeah,
right?
huge.
So how do they really benefit from having this defined fandom base or fan base? Or is it something that is more useful for like Chika idols or like smaller groups?
Honestly, I feel like Chika idols could benefit more from having it. I feel like they're not abusing the system enough.
So what system exactly? What does it entail that it's kind of classifies this as a system? So
I think like K-pop and J-pop are incredibly different. Like, for example, K-pop has like the trainee system, right? In J-pop, you don't really have that, even for like high-level groups. Like, you go to lessons and classes, but it's after you've already been decided that you will be an idol. Where for K-pop, it's like you become a trainee first. You may never debut.
I see.
And so there's those kind of systems that are different. And when it comes to fandoms too, like I said, if you're like a smaller Chika idol, you typically can remember everyone by name. If you're a higher level idol, I mean, even in Japan, I'm sure it would be impossible to remember everyone's names. I've never heard that they have like a particular fandom name, even for the larger groups like AKB and stuff. So I feel like it would be nice for them to have. I feel like it relieves a lot of like pressure on the idol, and it makes finding other fans so much easier, because on Instagram and stuff, if I type in like hashtag whatever my fandom name is, so many other people appear. But it's really hard to do that for J-pop. And I feel like that is why K-pop has really exploded overseas, while J-pop has still kind of remained a mostly local kind of thing.
Interesting. So these groups and the names is a very Korean thing. It's not common in Japan.
No, not at all.
How big is K-pop though in Japan? You mentioned you kind of really are into that, but it's not. I would assume maybe like if you're into J fashion, you might be more into J-pop, and you were into visual K before as well.
Yeah.
But how is it like being a K-pop fan in Japan? Is there like a huge community or?
Oh, it might. I think it might even have a bigger one than Korea at this point.
Wow.
Yeah, it's huge, and like. Idols are doing like stadium tours, selling out Tokyo Dome. Like it's crazy how big K-pop has become, especially in Japan. And I feel like K-pop is really like J-pop and K-pop are so different. And J-pop's awesome too, like both like boy groups and girl groups and stuff. It's just very different.
How so?
So I feel like Japan focuses a lot on cute appeal. Where K-pop may not necessarily be cute. They might be a little bit more like sexy or noisy or something like that. And while that music does exist in Japan, it's not promoted really as idol music. Where K-pop tends to kind of have a bit less of an image on sound alone. K-pop is K-pop. But like J-pop is like when you think of J-pop, you typically think of like really, really cutesy music, whether it's boys or girls. And that's what I mean for idol J-pop. Obviously, like if you just considered like normal Japanese popular music, a lot more things come to mind. But if you're thinking of idols, you're thinking of Johnny's and AKB, like very cutesy kind of stuff.
It's interesting because within Japan, these seem to be like the popular ones. And yet K-pop is starting to dominate, but they have this very different image. You mentioned like the women tend to portray themselves as more sexy. There's a bit more vulgarity, if I can say it like this, trying to be more challenging the image of the strong woman and such. How do these then resonate with the Japanese audience that is maybe, or at least before K-pop became popular, more tied to Japanese music and therefore the more cutesy looking idols?
So one thing that I find incredibly interesting, and this was something that I learned from when I was an idol, is I asked one of my fans, like, do you usually listen to like idol music? And they said, no. They were like, I like to support my favorites. So music was like second to this person. They considered the idol first. So whatever they make, they'll enjoy.
So where does the interest in the idol come from if it's not for the music? Because the idol goes on stage to perform a song.
Yeah. So I think for the West, I often think music comes first. I don't think that it has the exact same connotation as in Japan. I feel like in Japan, they really like the personality or the vibe that idol gives off. And so they want to support them based on like helping them achieve their dream.
But how do they get to know them if they're not into that music?
How
do you find that person that you want to support if you are not necessarily into that music genre in the first place?
It really depends. Oftentimes, I'm sure like looks are a big factor, of course. And it's interesting because in Japan, even within a group, the cuter idols will be the most popular ones in Japan, even if they aren't that popular in Korea or overseas.
Interesting.
So, like, I find that incredibly interesting that, like, within each, like, country, like, you have your own set of beauty standards. They have their own set of, like, what they really like. And so in Japan, a lot of the times, the cutesy ones are the ones that are the popular ones, where in America, that's not usually the case. It's usually like the kind of more cool type.
So you found that out when you were an idol, that people are not necessarily into the music. What does it mean for the K-pop kind of coming into Japan and bringing in these different beauty standards, different language and communication into that scene and for oshikatsu there?
I do think like even like for idol fans, it may not necessarily be about the music, but I think that what is different now is that the music is more important in order to get people into K-pop. So like if you're on the street and you're listening to a song, you'll be like, oh, this is cool. Maybe like I'll check this out. And you try to find out what group it is or something. But to people who already like idols, it's not necessarily about the music so much. So I think that that's kind of like what has brought K-pop as like more of a global powerhouse now is that everywhere you go, like you're probably hearing K-pop somewhere.
Has this affected J-pop in a way that idols here realizing that maybe they're losing on popularity even with their domestic fan base, and they're like, oh, well, maybe we need to do something about it and change the...
Yeah, actually, this happened a few years ago. There was the J-pop group King and Prince, and they got into a huge dispute with their label and stuff for a few reasons, but one of the reasons being listed was that they wanted to have more overseas appeal. And the problem with Johnny's, or they're under a new name now, Star 2, I think, they're not on Spotify. You cannot stream this music.
Really? Okay.
And so you have to buy an album if you would like to listen to the full song. And so because of that, like this particular idol felt that like the group was being stunted, not getting to have its full growth and not being able to like capitalize on the popularity of just kind of Asian music in general. And because of that, the group split up, and yeah, it was a whole thing. So I feel like more J-pop idols will start maybe trying to push for less restrictions on their music within Japan so that they can have more appeal overseas.
Which will require kind of a big reform to the system. You mentioned Johnny is a company that kind of manages a lot of these idols and the physical album sales, which include the tickets usually to the meet and greets and whatnot. And that would all need to change for this to work. Yeah. We'll see if that all happens.
Yeah, I'm really curious about it.
So you've been in Japan now a few years. You said you checked all your boxes, the dreams you had. And now you're kind of just fine with going along. Yeah. But are there things that you'd like to be doing in the coming year or so that you haven't had the chance to experience yet?
Maybe try designing. I haven't done that yet.
Maybe for ACDC RAG, you could have a collab with Yumechi.
That would be cool. Please hit me up. I'll be in the second floor.
Jesse, we covered like so many topics, and I'm sure we could talk a lot more about each of them.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I yap a lot.
Anything important to you that we didn't really talk about? Anything that you would like people to still know? And whether it's about the J fashion or K-pop or anything that you wanted to talk about today?
I think, I would like people to not feel embarrassed by what they like. A lot of people look at my content and I'm sure think like, wow, that is embarrassing. She goes out dressed like that, or like, wow, she likes all these idols and stuff. But you don't have to grow up out of the hobbies and things that you like. I think that becoming an adult is more of like a mental thing with like being able to adapt to change and being able to take on responsibility. But that doesn't mean that you have to like throw away stuff that you enjoy because you're growing up. So I just want people to not feel embarrassed or ashamed to like what they like or dress how they dress. And I think that as we talked a lot about mental health, it's important to also take care of yourself first. So make sure that you're doing everything you can to be safe and have fun.
Jessie, thank you very much for coming and sharing a little bit about your story and your many insights into J fashion. That was super interesting, and I'm sure we could have you back for round 2 and see how things evolve in the next year.
I would love to. Please bring me back anytime.
Thank you very much. Thank you everyone for listening and watching. This was Unpacking Japan, and we'll see you again in the next episode. Bye.
Bye.
Wow. Yeah, super cool.
Thank you.
Thank you for sticking with us all the way till the end. We really appreciate it. If you haven't already, consider subscribing to the podcast. It helps us improve the show and bring you more in-depth conversations from Japan. Take care and see you next time.